What's going on, YouTube world and YouTube tribe? Welcome to LilBigMan Gaming, bringing you some reviews, 2 review videos at that, for Resident Evil and Watch Dogs Legion. I've been meaning to get to this. I've been progressing. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I'm gonna get to this. But this video is for this game, Resident Evil 8 Village. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here to enjoy the video. Sit back, relax, and let's have a discussion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about Resident Evil 8. So let's begin. The setting: Resident Evil 8 takes place in Eastern Europe and Romania, I think, and it is this. Like 3 years, and you'll find out in the story, but it takes place 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 8 Village is a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, but it does have a hidden gem, which I will get to that later. But where we start, let's start with how we get into the mess we're in now. 3 years later, Ethan, we find out that Ethan and Mia, along with their child Rose, has been moved to this Eastern Europe house by Chris Winfield and his organization. We also find out that he might. You find out later on in the story. I won't say anything about it, but if he's working with BSAA or not, or what's going on. But you know, they've been moved here to Eastern Europe. You know, they live in this new life. You know, they got jobs and stuff. You find out that Ethan's been put through military training, so now he's more equipped than he was the first time around. But you know, you find out very early on, like in the actual, you know, the first parts of the game, how they've been dealing with the trauma of the Baker incident, as they're calling it. You know, how they call the Raccoon City, you know, Raccoon City incident, the Mansion incident, you know, the train incident. They all got these incident names, and the Resident Evil 7 is officially called the Baker incident. And you find out, you know, what happened to the certain people in the game, you know, from that game, and how they're living with and dealing with the things now. Your protagonist, once again, is Ethan Winters. He returns, as like I said, this is a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, and just like they do live up to that, his story comes to a close, but they don't tell you whose story, but you do learn whose story they're talking about. I won't spoil anything, so this won't be a huge long video, but this is just my thoughts on the certain parts that I will talk about. So we start off with, you know, there's a family dinner, you know, things happen. I won't mention what you do, you know, stuff, but there is a family dinner. And all of a sudden, like you see, like we saw in the previews and maybe the first 15 minutes, like from IGN or whatever, you see that things go awry. Chris comes, he shoots Mia, they take Rose and knock Ethan unconscious. You know, Ethan don't know anything. They don't know why. He doesn't know why Chris and his team is doing this. And then you wake up, you track through the snow, you end up at this village. This village that has been overrun by lichens. Yes, lichens. Just for a quick moment, I was hesitant for the whole thing about lichens, and I'm gonna tell you why. It made me feel the same way about Resident Evil 4, and we all know Resident Evil 8 is very Resident Evil 4 inspired. There are elements and everything from Resident Evil 4 that is put into this game, and that's actually a plus. But the one thing it did do, like Resident Evil 4, it made me weary about the new enemy types. Just like when our transition to Resident Evil 4, the first of the Resident Evil games we've been playing, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1, the Resident Evil 1 remake, you know, all these Resident Evil, all these things had zombies, right? None of them had, up until 4, it always been zombies. And then 4 came, I'm like, okay, yeah, we get 4. Oh, yeah. 4 came, and then it was like, wait a minute, hold on, these don't look like zombies, these look like regular people. Why is Leon shooting regular people? Turns out that these new enemy types are not, zombies, but they're parasites. They're people infected by a parasite. What? But they move they move slow like zombies. They do have that. But they're talking, they communicate with each other, it's not scary. But playing the game, it got me. I warmed up to it. I warmed up to the Granados. And by that point, when Resident Evil 5 came out, I warmed up to. I was already, warmed up to Granados. So I was cool with the Maginis. I was cool with the I forgot their name for the ones for the affected people in Resident Evil 6. But harping back to Resident Evil 8, the same thing applies. I was hesitant about the werewolves. It's okay. It was only rumored when they were first talking about Resident Evil 8. It was only rumored that the new enemies were going to be lycans and vampires and all that type of stuff. And that it was one thing for the affected, because this was still affected people, but it was controlled by parasites. We're talking about werewolves and stuff now. What the hell? This is way what Resident Evil is not. But once you play the game, you find out that it's more Resident Evil than you think. It's really Resident Evil. And now that I'm playing it, and I played it a little bit again, yeah, it's Resident Evil. So like Resident Evil 4, I warmed up to it. So that being said, I warmed up to it pretty quickly, because it wasn't like, it didn't take me like halfway through the game. Your first dealings with the lycans, you saw in my playthrough, my first dealings in that first video, I warmed up to them, because it was very intense. They was very menacing, and that I got scared. A lot of the jump scares came from the werewolves a little bit. Not necessarily all the werewolf times you encounter them, but a little bit, because they move so fantastically that they can sometimes be behind you, just like in Resident Evil 4 and 5. Sometimes enemies could be behind you, but they move so animalistic that you could turn around, you aim your gun, you could turn around right underneath, like right here underneath your arm. You aim the gun, and right here, if you look down the screen, you can see one just like, you're like, oh, what the hell? And so a couple times that got me. A couple times I'm turning to shoot one, and there's one underneath my arm, telling something, in my face. I'm just like, oh, god damn it. I'm like, my heart is pounding. I almost shat myself, because that, stuff like that. And then, then you get into the I got scared every time I ran into the daughters. My first playthrough, because you don't know when they'll pop up. Sometimes you could figure it out a little bit after a little into it. You start getting a hang of when they're gonna pop up, but it still gets you sometimes. And the way how they do it, you don't notice it. They subtly, when the doors get ready to pop up, the music and the volume, it just gets a little bit lower subtly, because they want you to hear that I'm starving. You're like, oh god, they want you to hear that she just coming out of nowhere saying she's starving, or they want your blood, and they want that to startle you, that out of nowhere burst of voice. And once Lady Demetress gets involved, that's a whole nother thing. Leading into that, the four lords. So you meet the four lords, technically 5, because if you add Mother Miranda, but Mother Miranda they consider the four lords. So Mother Miranda runs the four lords. The four lords are Lady Demetress, Heisenberg, Moreau, and Benevento. Benevento. At least I hope I'm saying that right. And though they're all terrific in their own way, it's the lack of creativity with them that brings it down. Now, the first high, the first thing I gotta give the credit to is that, at least for the first 2 bosses, I I guess was that. I guess that's kind of spoiler to tell you that the first two is Lady Demetress and Benevento. Those are the two best sections. Now I won't tell you when Heisenberg, which was next, either Heisenberg or Moreau, but they the two best sections. Lady Demetress section is creepy in its own right because, like I said, you got the three daughters who could pop up anywhere. Then once you get to a certain part, you trigger the stalking phase of Lady Demetress, and once she stalks you, she could pop up anywhere, and it just it just like with Mr. X, just like with Nemesis, she got her own little music that plays when she's near you and about to come, and when she's about to come into your area. And when that music hits, you're like, oh God, oh here she comes. Or maybe for some you like, oh yes, please come at me. But once you get into her stalking phase, she becomes a menace. And I noticed on hardcore or the harder difficulties, she's actually more of a menace than she is on the easier ones. And I say that because no matter what difficulty you play on, I noticed that each time you defeat a daughter, Jesus, my camera, I hate you. Each time you defeat a daughter, you essentially make her more aggressive. She gets more aggressive. She attacks you more, and it's just like, oh wow, here we go. I know I killed another daughter, now she's even more aggressive. Each daughter makes her more aggressive. But the harder the difficulty, the difficulty already ups the aggression, and then it plays up more that you kill her daughters. See, and once you get to killing all three of her daughters, it's just her left in the castle. At that point, it's hard to get away from her. Like, I could enter a room, she automatically just pops up there. She doesn't do like Mr. X and just go wander around the whole. She, like Mr. X and Nemesis, she can't enter the safe room, but she doesn't go wander the whole castle and just leaving you free willy-nilly. She stays relatively close to your area, and then when you get out, you got maybe a couple of minutes before she comes back and get to you. And when she'll get you, because she'll tell you like, the house of Demetress done in by the likes of you will pay. And you like, oh God. And she moves faster. And on the harder difficulty, she moves very fast. Like where Mr. X, Nemesis, he's running at you and stuff. She's somewhat like a Mr. of the two, where she doesn't run until she get close to you like Mr. X, but she doesn't walk slow like Mr. X. She speed walks. So when you're in the distance, like when she cuts off your hand, she throw you across the room. If you stand there and watch and pay attention, when she starts walking, she's not walking like this, slow. And then when she get close enough, start like how Mr. X was. She's like speed walking towards you with her hand though, getting ready to slice you. And then when she get closer, she even goes even faster. So it's like, if you're not already ahead of her in speed, she will slice you. But that's her part. Then that's a plus. The downside is once the three daughters, though they're a part of the scare factor and they're also a plus, they're also a negative in the fact that they're not that different from the creatures like the Lycans and stuff. It don't take much, especially if you got a leveled up infinite ammo gun, or even in your first playthrough, it won't take much to kill them. Especially if you're just getting them all headshots, you're gonna put them down quick. It's not even gonna feel like a boss battle at that point. And at that point, it's just like, oh wow, that was kind of quick. Okay, she makes up for it, but then oh wow, okay, that was kind of quick. It don't really take much to get. I honestly would say it takes you about, once you get into the thick of the castle, it takes you about at least a good, if you just play through and you know what you're doing, you could get out of the castle roughly 15 to 20 minutes. And that's it. That's it. That's all her section. That's if you don't take the time to explore and take everything in. It's roughly just going straight to objective to objective to objectives. It's a roughly about 15-20 minute journey in the castle. That's it, and that's bad. That's bad. But we move on to Benevento. Her part is the next best part. Oddly, the two that like I think that was done on purpose. The two ladies it's 3 ladies and 2 dudes, and 2 of the ladies are the best parts of the game. It are really the best parts, and that's Lady Dimitrescu and Benevento. So out of the 3 ladies, it's only 3: Mother Miranda, Benevento, and Lady Dimitrescu. That means that's not so good for Mother Miranda, right? So, getting to that, you get on to Benevento. Hers is the best part. Hers, hands down, is the best part. I had no complaints about her part, because where I felt a little jaded about the Lady Dimitrescu part, Benevento makes up for that, and her part through and through is the best. Only because for me, I have a thing about porcelain dolls, and her little puppet already freaked me the hell out. So I'm just like, oh God, I hate you. I hate you. Even when you had to, when you had to kill Angie, I think her name was, and when you had to kill the little doll and stuff, it's just like, I hate you because you're so freaky. And the thing I love about Benevento's part, her whole section is inspired by the originality of what Resident Evil 4 is supposed to be. Resident Evil 4 in its entirety was just supposed to be that of a hallucination. The original Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be about Leon still in this village, but everything he fought and saw was a part of this hallucinogenic like plant that was causing people to hallucinate, and cause you hallucinate that the things you saw were real, but it wasn't. So they took that and made the whole Benevento part that what originally was Resident Evil 4. And then the whole baby boss thing, that scared the holy hell out of me. I was terrified. But yeah, that was the best parts. Then we get to the later parts, which is at this point, once you get to the after you get to the Benevento and whoever's next, like I said, I won't tell you who's next at the Benevento, but there's only 2 people left before you get to Mother Miranda, which is Moreau and Heisenberg. Now, I won't tell you who's next, but together, they sections together, I could combine them and say that I really didn't not enjoy them, but I didn't enjoy them as much as the Benevento or the Dimitrescu part. They put Heisenberg's was a little better than Moreau's. I will say that about Heisenberg. His part was way better than Moreau's. Or not way better, a little bit better. But Moreau's wasn't bad either. It was just like, at that point, they felt more like Resident Evil 4 and 5 bosses, and they didn't really have no intention. That was more, their part was more action. It wasn't, I didn't feel scared being near them. And only because the only time I felt scared in the Benevento, or felt the survival horror in Heisenberg's and Moreau's part, was where I didn't know whether or not I would be facing werewolves or whoever. And when you did face them, they kind of get you out of nowhere. But other than that, like Heisenberg and Moreau and themselves was okay, were good at best, were okay to good. But then you get to Mother Miranda, and by the time you get to this point where you have to deal with Mother Miranda, you start to figure things out. You start to figure out what's going on, and what's the connection between the 2 games. Which there's a big connection with Resident Evil 7 and to that, I would say, origin. Do with that as you will. I won't say no more, but origin. As in, if I say origin, that pretty much tells you that you figure out some things, why things happen in part 7 that happened, you know, what have to do with this. But that leads me to the hidden gem. It's also a bigger, wider connection, not just with Resident Evil 7, but with their series as a whole. And that was like the best part. The whole connection to the series as a whole. That whole connection to the series made it worth getting to that point. At that point, I'm just like, oh, it was worth it. It really was worth it. Because wow, I didn't know it. Oh, okay. And that, I won't spoil what you learned because it's 2 different sections. But I will say that just like in Resident Evil 7, you do play as Chris. And both Ethan and Chris sections reveals the origins of certain things that we knew since we thought we knew since the first Resident Evil, and we figure out why and how things happen, and that the biggest question answer is that things from the first game connects that from the first game, Resident Evil 0, 1, 2, and 3, all that connects back to here in a big way, and that again, origin. So that means something, that means something before something. Mother Miranda's section was pretty much quick, as you saw. Even the video that when I posted the last video of that playthrough, that video was only like 20 minutes long, because that's pretty much really it. You pretty much, you're back as you pretty much fighting her, and once you don't really have enemies to fight. At this point, they all been killed by Chris, and I will say for his part is one of the reasons it wasn't so much bad. It was heavily actiony, so it was just like, oh wow, it's just they really doubled down the action on this part, and it kind of like, it kind of dull you, but they try to bring you back in with the Mother Miranda part, but then it kind of, at that point it's like, all right, I know the game is over with. But yeah, you fight Mother Miranda at the end as usual, and you finally figure out what's a big secret that Mia was hiding from Ethan, and that has something to do. And that's like the biggest, I would say, the biggest secret unanswered question between Resident Evil 7 and 8 is this secret about Ethan, and it's a doozy of a one. But yeah, then that's it. Then you treat it to a nice little epilogue and maybe a cliffhanger about who will be the next protagonist in Resident Evil 9 or whatever next Resident Evil will be. But yeah, that's it. And then you get points for doing all these different things, and you get to unlock. You gotta buy mercenaries. I didn't do the RE verse. I never did this, but I might give it a try. I might not. It didn't look appealing to me. I probably won't. But yeah. So you get. That's when you get to unlock the special section where you can unlock the infinite ammo and all that type of stuff. If I were to give, if it combined all my negatives and positives, I were to give this game anything, I would give it a. I would give Resident Evil 8 a solid 9. A solid 9. I would give it 9 big ups. I hate my camera right now. It's toying with me. Yeah, I give it 9 big ups because it's not a perfect 10 game, but it's not a game that goes above 9 rating. I wouldn't give it an 8 because it was way better than an 8. But it was better than an 8, but wasn't perfect 10. So it was a 9, and that's only because in the whole the 4 lores and stuff was good. The only downfall is that you go to boss too quickly, and I feel like it needed to be a lot more exploration. But that's it. That's all I got. And if you enjoy this review, or you just want to see the playthrough again, hit that button right here for all the Resident Evil 8 Village playthroughs. Hit this button right here in the lower corner to support the channel by hitting that subscribe button and hitting that like button, or hit any one of these videos for more of my amazing content. But stay tuned, another review is coming.